Hey, Brett Bean here, and I'm working with SketchBook Pro on this tutorial. And this one is I'm doing designs for, this is the villain of the story, and it's about future wizards where the natural wizards are sort of the heroes of the story, and the villains are ones that have sort of taken technology to a new level to compete. They're a little bit jealous of the future wizards, and so they've sort of augmented themselves and changed themselves to sort of be these hybrid robotic slash, almost Apple computer, walking around as Apple computers. I got a lot of ideas from Google Glass and Apple, and the very sleek designs. So a lot of the design choices I was making in this are really trying to sleek the ideas, not have lots of stuff sticking out of them, sort of like in that third one that we had just done. His shoulder pads were a little bit too long and he had a little bit too much going on, so I really tried to streamline him, even adding the Apple wheel to the chest of this guy, and just really thinking about let's really elongate the arms and legs so they feel off-putting on purpose, so they feel like they don't feel normal. And so that's the reason I'm doing that is I'm trying to come up with the idea behind it is that these guys are definitely changing their body types because they're a little bit sociopathic towards what they're looking for, which is to outdo the natural wizards at their own game, but they don't have natural ability. So it's how do they do it? How do they do it through tech? But then that starts to kind of change their personalities and their feelings overall. So again, I kind of made it a brief for myself, and then this is me sort of extrapolating and thinking. And so once I have the idea where I like this sort of elongated, strange guy here with out of place bone structures, I wanted to put him in a little bit cooler pose because that's what I did with the other the hero. So I kind of wanted them to kind of feel in the same world. So a lot of angles on this guy. One, I like to draw the eye to certain subjects, within the piece. But really, I'm trying to do more hard lines for a more aggressive, angry design. And then also cut lines inside instead of having big bulky stuff. And that's also sort of to do with that sleek design interface that Apple and a lot of those products have. So I'm trying to do a lot of that stuff. And here I'm doing ink lines, and I'll include this in a file for brushes. But this is like one of my favorite brushes that I use for myself. And I'm just sort of placing out all the different ideas using the elliptical tool. Trying to just do a bunch of different things so you can kind of see how I use SketchBook Pro in a lot of different ways. And then I move in after I'm done with the inking phase. I just start blocking in the character. And what I do is a lot of the times I'll do big sections of the character that I think are going to be similar in the same tone or colors. And then I lock the layers. So you can lock the layers in SketchBook Pro, and that's what I use. So once I'm drawing in the line, I got the shape. I don't think about drawing outside of the line anymore. That's why I lock the layers, because then I'm just worried about the problem at hand, which is trying to convey my shadows and my tone and an overall feel for the piece. So for me, I'm using a straight up blue, and then I am using an airbrush to sort of do a light tone, and then I'm going in with another brush that I have that's more of like a knife palette, and I'm just kind of cutting in some shade and changing the colors. A lot of the times I don't have an idea of what colors I actually want. I just start somewhere. That's the beauty of designing in SketchBook Pro is you can change all this color stuff whenever you want to. So I just kind of start in a blanket way. I did blue because it's cold, and a little bit, not welcoming blue. It's a little bit coldish blue. And the red I chose because I wanted a counterbalance to that, but I also wanted to be a little bit more evil. So I'm choosing like a darker maroon red instead of like a really bright, shiny, happy red. So this is just me kind of playing around and getting my basic shadows done, because that's how I kind of work. Then I got the idea accidentally. This is where the happy accidents come in, where that little purple came in between the colors of the red and the blue. I was like, oh, I kind of like that for that human body, for the color of the face. So I wanted to blend that in there, that this is somebody who's, the human parts of him are a little bit more dead. And so it's starting to he doesn't have a lot of color, like the main hero, where all of these guys would be standing out, because as they get augmented, the color of their skin would start to not have as much blood, or it would create a more dynamic range between the heroes and the villains. So at this stage, because I'm experimenting with the overall design and structure of what I think the whole world would be like, I don't really limit myself saying this is right or wrong. I kind of just I would do probably 5 or 6 different versions of these guys at the end of the day. By the time I talk to the art directors or whoever else is involved, if it's not just me, this is a project just for me, so it's much easier this way. But if it was for a client, a lot of the stuff would be on separate layers. So when they said, oh, we don't like the color of his skin, it's an easy switch over. As I go, oh, okay, well, you want it this color, you want it this color, do you want to go crazy and have it all, bright green, whatever they want. But because it's me, I can be a little bit looser and sort of just keep going until I find what I'm looking for. I decided that I wanted a little bit of see-through tech with his augmentation, kind of like, those cool computer that people build, and they have like water tanks inside to make it all like run smoother and faster and stuff. So I got that idea just from having that sort of idea of like, oh, okay, if they really did augment their body and change a lot of their structure, there would be this coolant and stuff happening inside. I may actually go back and add bones inside there, but I thought it was going to be too distracting, so I didn't add those. But that would be a variation I would use later, because at the end of the day, it's really about getting the idea across, and does the art service the overall idea? For me, that's what it's about. It's not about the prettiest piece of art. It's what conveys the idea that you're trying to get across. I'm sticking with the blues and the reds because I want it to also be pretty sleek designed, and not too many variations to where he's too colorful. So I want him to be sci-fi and different, but I want him to be coherent and well designed, like an Apple product. So not too many crazy things going on. And so, yeah, I'm just messing with colors and changing things and seeing what works. I would do different variations of this for a client. I would have 5 or 6 versions of this guy, and I'd say, which one do you like? Do you like it more yellow? Do you like it more purple? Do you like it more green? And I kind of go back and forth. For me, I can just keep playing until somewhere in my brain it goes, okay, that's kind of what I want. I like that conveys the idea correctly. And to mirror my hero, I also want them to have gloves and sort of use their power through their hands, because I do want a connection between the two, that these guys are always playing second fiddle to the real wizards. That creates that jealous tension between them, that they've always kind of wanted to be them, but they're not them. So I'm actually, on the other side of the screen, I actually have my hero, and you can see it in the blog post. But I'm sort of referencing that to make sure that they fit in the same universe, that they relate to each other, that it's more of a yin and yang sort of scenario between the two, because that's kind of what I really wanted for them. And again, staying in the same sort of color scheme, not getting too crazy. And now that I have sort of the basic overall design of my character, and I sort of changed the background to sort of so I can start painting on top of that, so I can kind of see what he looks like, and not just a white stark background, because rarely will you ever see your character in a white background. I chose red to counter the hero's blue, so that's the only reason why I did it. But a lot of this is using airbrush for the overall light color, blocking in the shapes, and then this is you can grab the line and lock it, and you can actually paint into the line. So if you're really clean with your line work, you can do what I'm doing here, which is I'm actually airbrushing in the colors by locking in that layer. So you're only painting within that layer. So if you're clean with your line, you can actually sort of just do that, and you can have colored line work. This is an overlay layer, so I'm just kind of blocking it in, and then I'm sort of erasing out to make certain designs, and I'm using it as an overlay layer to sort of build on top a little bit of that techie sort of glossy, cool nuance that I'm looking for. It's just fun to do this kind of stuff. It's just purely design aesthetic, but I think it sort of pops and makes it definitely more techie and sci-fi. So that's why I kind of threw it in there. Yeah. And this is usually when I start trying to come up with new ideas of like, oh, okay, maybe there's light coming off of him. And then I start attacking. So I do go from big to small. I do the big shapes, and now I can start on the tertiary stuff where I've got, oh, okay, this green. And actually looking at it now, I would probably change that green to be a different color. I would probably make it a red like his tunic, his see-through tunic. I would probably make it closer to that. And I think I did that in the separate piece. I think I changed it by the time I got to finished recording. But just sort of trying to make the different shapes appealing and together, but not getting too crazy, because I don't want you to have to look everywhere and go, oh my gosh, there's just so many things. It's a fine balance, and design is all about that. You're trying to find other people that agree with your design sense. You can't win them all. So to me, I'm trying to make something that you are somewhat familiar with, but something uniquely different. You're like, oh, okay, I accept this world. I accept what these characters are about. I understand what they're going for. But hopefully this character definitely conveys not a nice guy. If he did, I would just start from scratch, because that's missing the point. So to me, concept art and doing this stuff is not whether you do a nice, fine piece that looks good and is acceptable. It has to get the job done. And that's what I think production art is, right? You're kind of married in between these two worlds, which is being an artist and being a designer. Being an artist, you can make anything, and if it looks good or gets attention, it's a win, right? You go, hey, I won because somebody's paying attention to it. Great. But design is all on purpose. If you make a design and somebody doesn't understand what you mean, it's a complete fail. And so for concept art, you're sort of living in between these two worlds. So it has to be appealing to look at and get people invested in, but it also has to the point has to be made. So here you're going to see me sort of struggle and wrestle with the eyes a little bit, because I just didn't like it. So I changed this up a few times, I think, in the video here. But really, as a concept artist, that's your main goal, is to make something that they haven't seen, but they sort of understand and know that there's something that they can relate to. And then on top of that, make it so it's designed on purpose. Kind of like if you've been to a website and you didn't know where to click and you got lost, you get really frustrated and you're like, well, I'm done with this. This is stupid. And you just go to a new website. That's the same thing with a character design, in my opinion. You could look at something that looks beautiful, but if you don't get it and it doesn't mean anything, who cares? So first and foremost, I think the most important thing is that the idea is conveyed, what you're looking for. And this is the bad guy, uses tech. And then you would have other supplemental materials between that. But that first read is pretty important. So he looks like, hopefully, if I've done my job right, he doesn't look like the good guy. He definitely looks aggressive and mean, and he looks like he's from the future, and he's not just from the, he's not a medieval time. Oh yeah, and then here's where I really sort of went, okay, let's see if we can change the eyes. That's another big thing that that I truly believe in is don't be afraid of going back and changing stuff if it's not working. If it's all about the idea, you're okay with changing. That looks a little bit too what's that, Who Framed Roger Rabbit when he's screaming out, so I changed that too. But the main purpose, your main goal is that idea, and so don't be married to, because I drew it or I did a good job, I'm gonna save it no matter what. I suggest keep going and seeing if you can figure out a better way to do it, because it's all in service of that idea. And a lot of directors do that too. They'll get rid of their favorite scene on purpose, so they're always trying to do the best thing for the movie and not just for themselves or their favorite thing. So yeah, and this is me just sort of deleting layers and sort of seeing what works, and I just kind of repaint it all in and just go, okay, the last two did not work, let's bring up the head a little bit. He was looking a little bit too much. And again, this is just a pencil tool overlaid on top. You know, looking at it now, somebody might say it's a little bit too Voldemort. And I would agree. I think between the skin tone and not having a nose, and I was doing it, all I was thinking about is like, okay, if I were to augment myself, for the most part, the nose would not be so much a concern anymore. It would it's kind of in the way. It's not streamlined. It's kind of just good enough that you have a nose right there. So that's kind of why I added it. But I should probably go back and do a couple versions and just kind of see if I can solve that problem so it doesn't necessarily right off the bat remind me of Voldemort. But that's kind of my idea behind it, was like, okay, let's take away the nose, because if they're changing everything else, what's the point with the nose, you know? It just sits out there. It's not aerodynamic. It's not helping out. So, but because it's also has to do with wizards, it's definitely too close. So that's a problem I would solve later on after I did this. And that's all concept art, right? It's not necessarily getting it right. You're sort of getting all the wrong out of the way. You can't have the conversation of what is correct and what works for your property unless you're willing to do the hard work, which is getting all the wrong stuff out of the way so you can have that dialogue. So you can't be afraid of screwing up and you know, and going back and fixing it. So as long as you have a healthy attitude towards what your goal is as a concept artist, that's going to be the important part. And this would be one of those ones I go back and go, okay, we need to fix that problem. Let's go back and do that. So, and here, now that I've got the main character down, I just kind of wanted to explain quickly some of the features about him, how he's augmented his arms, and then I had an idea of that to be streamlined and efficient. They make all of their fingers the exact same size. One, I think it's really creepy, and then on top of that, I think if I was in their brain, which is a big part of concept art, is trying to think about your character, is why wouldn't they do that? Why wouldn't they try to streamline a lot of their features? You know, they have these elongated arms and legs, but then even their toes and their arms, maybe they add different joint pieces in there so they're all the same length. And then these were some of the quick designs to kind of figure out what I was going to do. And that's the finished one. So thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed.